I'm Mark Robison. Welcome to part 2 of this webinar on creating your roadmap for 2021. This particular session will focus on how to create an action plan that guides your team and creates real results with less stress. And so again, I'm Mark Robison, Senior Consultant from Humane Network and co-host of the Shelter Success Simplified podcast. Our two presenters today are Bonnie Brown and Diane Blankenberg. They are the founders of Humane Network, which is a nonprofit consulting organization that can help your organization with everything from animal behavior training and fundraising to operations and strategic planning. You can also outsource some of your work to us, such as fundraising and communications. The first conversation with us is free, so do not hesitate to reach out at info@humanenetwork.org. You can check out Bonnie and Diane's bios on the Humane Network website and see the rest of our team there too. Before we start, please know that you can ask questions at any time in the chat window at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And so just ask them as they come to mind, and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. And so now I will turn things over to Bonnie and Diane.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Welcome again to part 2 of creating a roadmap for your organization. I'm Diane Blankenberg, the CEO of Humane Network. And Bonnie?
It would help if I unmuted. I'm Bonnie Brown, the president of Humane Network. Great to see you all today.
Great. Thank you. So today we're going to cover a few things in the second part of this particular topic. And the first is how to communicate the roadmap that you created and the mission that you have hopefully created with your whole team. We're also going to talk about how to turn goals into actions, both for your departments and also for individuals. And hopefully this will help you unify your team and guide your team as it makes decisions and performs its roles throughout your organization. So next week, we're going to move on to a second topic, which is tuning up your organization, and specifically look at eliminating bottlenecks to get some of your important work done so it's easier, and again, that it's creating a united move forward with your team. So to get started here, we have another poll. If you were with us last week, we have several polls throughout the presentation. And the first one is, do your team members, whether it's board, staff, key volunteers, know your mission? So hopefully you can all see the results. It shows that 58% say all or most, which is actually, I think, quite good based on my own personal experience. And then, of course, the other 42% are divided with the some or few or not sure. So the good news is that a lot of you are on track with that, and hopefully we can just help you continue in that same path, or help those of you that maybe don't have quite the same engagement to set up your organization for more success there. So this was an interesting Gallup study that was done in the workplace, and it said 2/3 of those that were employed are disengaged at work. Kind of a sad state, I would say. 51% of full-time employees don't really feel a connection with their job, and because of that, they don't really give it their all. And then an additional 16% said they are actively disengaged. We hope it would be better in our field than this, but not necessarily so. As you see here, a Stanford survey on nonprofit board members showed that 27% lack understanding of their organization's mission and strategy, and over 50% lack understanding of their own roles and responsibilities. Again, kind of a sad state. But I guess for those of you that don't feel that you have good understanding throughout your organization, at least it makes you not feel like you're the only ones. And again, I hope we're going to be providing some tips and guidance on how you can do a better job of this in the future. And also why it's important. We talked, those of you with us last week, we talked a little bit about Stephen Covey, and another great quote from him is, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. When you go through the effort to build a mission, to develop goals, it really doesn't do much if it's not communicated to your team. So you need to find ways that you are not only just communicating it once, but communicating it regularly. So it really becomes incorporated into the organization's day-to-day life. And not only communicated, but you want to do things so that you're really helping them embrace the mission and believe it and live by it and be true to it. So here are some ways that you can communicate the mission to be sure it's front of mind for your staff and volunteer and board members. Make sure it's a part of the orientation for everybody, whether it is staff, volunteers, or board members. Make it a part of all of your routine meetings, whether it's the management level meetings, or it could be stand-up all staff meetings. A lot of times we put together smaller team meetings to work on specific projects or specific issues. And you can certainly post it around your organization for those of you that still have employees that are going into the facility. And then just include it in regular pieces of internal communication, and whether that could be in your email signatures and certainly out to the public too. So it could be in news releases and other communiques that are going out of the organization. I think it's just really important that it's really lived within the organization. It's part of your day-to-day life, and it really guides the decisions that you're making. And so these are ways to get and keep your mission in front and center with all of your supporters and staff. And I think that I go back to when I started at Nevada Humane Society. Bonnie was the executive director there. And one of the first things we did, obviously, was to get our mission established. And it was in the early days when the no-kill movement, even though not everybody's necessarily using that term these days, but we really changed our approach and how we were going to save all healthy and treatable animals coming into our shelter, and actually all that were in the community and other shelters. So we wanted to be sure we stayed focused on that. And it's just something we used every day to guide us in making decisions and deciding on anything from what vendors we used to how we laid out our shelter to what kinds of staff we wanted and what the roles and responsibilities were of everybody. So it really became the driving force and made a huge difference in our success there. So you want to make sure it's included in your discussions with others, as well as your formal presentations, and always by tying it back or tying whatever the role is back to the mission. And it helps to share stories and celebrate the successes, so that it motivates people to be true to the mission. And I know that, with anything, we need to repeat it many times and use multiple strategies or multiple ways to communicate. And I think one of the things too is that, sometimes when we talked about last week, communicating or rather creating missions, they can be kind of wordy and hard to remember. So sometimes you can create kind of a tagline or a subset of it that is easy to remember and kind of keeps people on track, and that can also be shared and help people keep focused. So now I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie.
Hi, yes. So before we launch into the next, part of the stuff we're going to share with you guys today, we have another poll for you. Has your organization had an action plan before? And you can let us know if it's worked well for you, or yes, you had an action plan, but it wasn't really used very much, or you're just not sure if you had one, or you didn't. In just a minute, Laurie will show us the results here. This is possibly even better than I thought, because nearly a third of you all, 27%, have had an action plan before and have found that it worked for you. Nearly 20% have, but it didn't end up being used, and about 55% either didn't or aren't too sure. So that's pretty much what I would expect. So what we're going to do now is talk about your, as Diane just did, talk about communicating your mission and your goals with your team. And once you've done that, it's time to really delve back into those goals and break them down to a level that, as Diane said, relate to every single job in your organization. And you not only want to be talking about that in meetings. For example, if you hit a major goal, it's great to let everyone know and thank them about it. And it can be really helpful to point out how everyone contributed to it. For example, if you had a spay-neuter goal or an adoption goal, it might be easy to think that you'd want to credit the clinic team or the adoption team, and certainly they play a role in those things. But think about it, everybody does. The person who makes sure the shelter is clean and sanitary, the folks who clean up after the animals. If you have an adoption goal, the veterinary team is spaying and neutering those animals, so they're participating in the success of the adoption goal. So really, if you can tie anything that happens back to every single job in your organization, that's really, really helpful. And you can explain this when you're talking to people. And as Diane said, repetition, it's really crucially important. So now we're going to share a tool with you for creating your action plan for your organization. And there are lots of benefits to doing this. It will enable you to create results with a lot less stress, and it'll get the whole team pulling in the same direction. But it will also help to really engage everybody. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of your action plan and how to create it, I want to talk about what tools you use with your team. And the tools you pick are going to really depend on your team. You need to think about what is right for your team. What will people actually use? There are low-tech solutions. For example, we're going to share with you some worksheets that we've developed. But you could also create your own documents, or you could do a search online and turn up some other documents that you might feel would be a good fit for your organization. And that could be a low-tech way to approach this. Or you could look for some higher tech solutions. And there's two that we would suggest. One is Trello. It's very simple to set up, and it's free for most organizations unless you're a fairly large organization. And the way it works is that you can create an electronic corkboard, so to speak, and you can create cards and move them into different lists. You can assign tasks to people in Trello, set up due dates, and it's very easy to learn. And everyone on the team can have access to it. So you could use that as a tool. And the worksheets we're going to share with you, those might be a guide in terms of creating the structure you want and need within Trello. Another popular tool is Asana, and that is a work planning tool, and it allows you to track goals, tasks, deadlines. You can create Gantt charts if you're a fan of Gantt charts, and you can create and track work form requests. So you'd have like work orders, or that you'd be able to track when those were completed. There is a free version of that you could check out, but if you were really going to use it, unless you're a small organization, you'd probably subscribe to it, and there would be a fee. And again, I just want to say that there is no one right way. So you need to figure out what's going to work for your team. If you have staff, and many of them do not have their own computers, that might be a consideration in terms of which tools you use. If your staff is all very, into technology, then they could be frustrated if you just used, a paper system. So think about your team and think about what they'll actually use, and go with that. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the actual action plan form. And we actually have two forms that we're going to share with you. Mark will be sending them to you on Friday. And as I said, you can use them as they are, you can adapt them, and they could form a framework that'll help guide you in setting up an app or an electronic tool for monitoring your progress. In any case, what we've done to help show you how these could work for you is created two fictitious organizations, and we've made samples for you to take a look at today. And we're going to go through those. And on Friday, Mark will send you the samples, but also the blank master documents so that you can use them as you see fit. So now we're going to look at the first sample. And as you can see on the sample, we're just going to step through it. We've made up a fictitious humane society here, the Humane Society of Greater Gotham. And the name is filled in and the date of the plan. And then we have filled in the mission for the whole organization. As Diane pointed out, you just want to keep that in front of everyone all the time. So we want to be sure that everything is tying back to the mission. So it would appear here. And then we have the goal. And this is for the whole organization. And as if you were on last week's session, we talked about trying to get down to 5 goals, no more than 5. So this is the first goal for this organization, as you can see here. And then on the next line, they have drilled down to 2 strategies for how the organization expects to achieve this particular goal. And so here, their original goal was to increase their foster homes this year. And they have 2 strategies for doing that, recruiting new foster homes and retaining foster caregivers. So down below that is a chart, and across the very top line of the chart, you'll see that there are roles filled in. The organization or you would be filling that in. So for this goal, these are the teams or the individuals that the leadership feels are going to need to do work to achieve this particular goal. And then along the left column that is highlighted blue, you'll see that they have drilled down further on the 2 key strategies and devised actual tasks or actions that need to be completed in order to achieve those goals. And they have suggested who is likely going to be responsible for that with check marks. And again, you can devise your own way that you want to use these forms. We're going to move on now to the second sample. And this one is a rescue organization, a fictitious rescue organization. Oh, wait, what did we, I think we skipped ahead somehow. There we go. Okay. So this is a made up rescue group, Loving Hearts Rescue. And again, they filled in the date, and this is their organization's mission: to save and protect animals, to provide care and treatment, to advocate for their welfare, and to enhance the human-animal bond. It's a nice mission statement. And their first goal is to increase the total number of volunteers, real volunteer hours that volunteers work this year by 25%. And how are they going to do that? They have 2 key strategies that leadership has figured out. They're going to attract new volunteers, and they're going to create a structure for empowering the volunteers. and they've noted who's in charge of this. It's a specific individual. So now we're going to go to the second page. This is page 2 and 3 of the plan, of the action plan for this fictitious rescue group. And again, across the top, they have listed the individuals. It could be departments if you have a larger organization, but it's perfectly fine for it to be individuals if they're volunteers or you're a smaller organization. And then down the left side, they've identified some specific areas where they're going to focus their work. Um, identifying where they could use volunteer help, and then they use the boxes that intersect. Wanda, the volunteer coordinator, is going to develop volunteer job descriptions, and all the other folks are going to give input. See what it says under the other on the far right. So again, this group is using the form a little differently than the other, but they're basically using it as a high-level action plan for the organization. So now, whoops, I lost my track here. Where are we? So, so now we're going to take these organizations' action plans, which you've just looked at, and we're going to turn them into plans that you can actually use for the individuals or departments within the organization. And how you use them, again, is going to be your decision, but it can be really helpful to have almost every single person having their own action plan, so they're really clear on what they're supposed to be doing. Otherwise, especially in our field, it is so easy to get caught up in the just needs of the day. And so having this action plan that you're referring to periodically can really be a huge help. But one of the questions that I'm sure you're thinking is, how on earth are we ever going to complete action plans for every person? Would just be doing that all day. So what you need to do is engage your team members in creating their own action plan. And that's, obviously not only makes it manageable for you, but it's really important because it helps people become even more invested in the success because they've had a part in helping to create the plan. So now we're going to look at a sample individual or department action plan for the fictitious Humane Society. And this is the goal to increase their foster care. And so in this case, the person in charge, and this is, this person's action plan, or possibly her department, and Marilyn is her name. So below it, again, we have the mission statement because this is this team or this individual's action plan. And then we have set dates. We're suggesting every 3 months, but you could do it more frequently or slightly less frequently, depending on what you think is going to be most important. But it's really important to set these review dates right up front so that you have them in your calendar and you absolutely have to focus on them and not let them slip past without using it as an opportunity to actually pull out this document or pull up your board on Trello and review where you're at. So now we're going to go to pages, the content on pages 2 and 3. And as you can see, they have the first goal listed there, which is, as we said, about increasing foster homes so that they're fostering 20% more kittens. And this team has taken the information provided by the leadership and they've drilled it down into a bunch of additional objectives and actions. So they're going to gain an understanding of the foster caregivers' opinions and preferences. This is a fairly large organization, so they already have a foster program. They're going to review and update their processes. They're going to make a plan to market and recruit more caregivers. They're going to plan a training process for them. They're going to create a support system for the foster caregivers, both in terms of medical care for the animals, but also peer-to-peer support. And they're going to show appreciation for the foster caregivers. They're going to figure out how they're going to do that. And it's always important to have in here that you're going to assess your progress and how you figure out how you're going to do that. So now they have some of the team members listed. And as you can see in the left column where it says actions, they have listed more detailed specific actions, and they've set dates, the date they're going to start that action and the date they anticipate having it concluded. And then under notes, they have some additional information that's going to help guide the people who are working on it. And this is a living document, so they may update this as they go along. And the status column is one that you can use again as you see fit. You could choose to have set terms that you put in there, like started, in progress, completed. Or you could use a color code system where that indicates that it's green, so everything's going well and on time, or it's yellow, meaning there's a few issues and we need to work on those, or red, meaning we're way behind or we're having a problem, so that you can work on that with leadership to overcome whatever the challenges are. And then maybe if you're using a color code system, you'd assign a color for completed, like blue, for example. So there's many different ways you can use a status column that would work for you. And this is what you would be looking at on those review dates, those periodic, at least every 3-month review dates, to see how you're coming along. So you don't get to the end of the year and go, oops, we didn't do anything on our goals this year. And this provides ongoing guidance to your team. So you don't have to personally be checking up on everything all the time. You have a process in place that makes it a little more manageable. And now we're going to take a quick look at the other fictitious organization, the rescue group. And in this case, you'll see their volunteer coordination person, Wanda, is going to be overseeing this. And again, they have set their progress dates where they're going to all review where they're at on this plan. And now we're going to go to pages 2 and 3 of their plan. And once again, they have their goal filled in there. Their goal is to increase volunteer hours this year. And the team has expanded on what leadership recommended. And they have a list of, it looks about 6 different actions that they are going to take. And they have listed those actions again under actions in the far left column where Diana's pointing. They've set their start and end dates, and they have some notes, and you'll see they have often several notes which are sort of supporting actions or steps that they're going to take to achieve that goal. And again, they're using their status in a different way, saying they're starting next week. And anyway, you get the idea. Having the team create these is really valuable, or an individual. If you're the only person, a small organization may have only one person, or even a large organization, they may only have one person doing marketing. So that person would need to complete this form for their marketing department, and leadership has helped them identify which of the goals they need to be working on, so that it all comes together at the end again, and you will see a lot more results because everyone's clear on what they're supposed to be doing. So often goals get set and it's never explained to the team how they participate in making those goals a reality. So these tools can help you do that.
All right, well, I'm going to take it back from here, and the next topic or subtopic here is how to keep these action plans alive. And Bonnie talked about various things that help, and we're using either the high tech or the low tech tools. But the key is to keep this in all your plans as a working, living document. By working, we mean that it will change because things change, the environment changes, the organization changes, the needs change, and therefore a living document that people are definitely going to use. I think back on the poll that Bonnie did, there was 20%, I believe, that said they had action plans, but they didn't use them. I came from the corporate world where we were really big on making plans, but we were also really big on putting them on a bookshelf and letting them sit there. So obviously, as was mentioned earlier, they're pretty useless if you're not using them. And in order to use them, people need to be bought into it, as Bonnie also said. So in one of the samples there, we actually developed, or the group developed, specific times to review the progress. And I do agree that it's just best to have that in the calendars to make sure you make it happen and that it is a priority. You can also talk about them in kind of some of your standard meetings periodically too, and especially if you have maybe a management meeting where the different departments can talk about the progress on their specific goals and share with the other departments, or even at your stand-up meetings. So you just want to encourage people to get excited about it and to share their progress. And of course, from a management point of view, you want to reward and celebrate the progress so that people feel good about it and are motivated to continue and even do more. So I have another quick poll here. And as it says here, are you comfortable coaching team members? Yes, I've done so before. Yes, I think I can do that. Not sure. Don't think so. Oh, great. And as you can see, 74% says you've done it before. So I think that's super high and really good. And a very small percentage, not sure, or well, I guess nobody put down for don't think so, but so that's great. I think that if you're comfortable, it's the first step, because a lot of people that aren't comfortable with things like this, then, you know, obviously the likelihood of doing it is greatly diminished. But hopefully we can, we're going to give you a few tips, and certainly our organization can help you more with these kinds of things if you have needs down the road as far as resources to help you. But not only do we want you to be comfortable with it, we want you to be able to be effective with it. So here's some coaching tips that we've outlined. I'm sure that since so many of you have done it, I'm sure many of these will ring true with you that you have tried, and or at least some of them. So with you want to just be sure, and that's why we really harp on the idea of making sure you have not only department goals but individual goals, so that it's really clear what the expectations are, and what is needed, and what specifically, and as we talked about last week, that they're SMART goals, because a lot of goals can be very ambiguous, and one would never know when you reached it. So if you just say we want to make the foster program better, or we want to increase the number of foster homes, well, increase by how many, and increase by when, and increase for what purpose. So you just want to be sure you're very clear, and then have specific actions. And again, the whole time management piece, and that's another whole topic that we could spend another hour on at least, but it's also really important. That's why you need to be reviewing the progress regularly, and to make those adjustments. They may need additional help, or maybe the original time was unrealistic, but if you're not regularly tracking and monitoring, you're not going to know that. Talk about the next steps, ask questions, practice active listening. You're coaching anybody, I think that's probably the most important. Both the active listening first and the asking questions second, because that's how we get people to talk and be able to understand truly what the issues are. Again, we talked about rewarding and celebrating and acknowledging the effort, and it's important to understand that people feel or take recognition in different ways, or feel appreciated in different ways. So understanding your team and how best to acknowledge their effort. And again, a lot of times I've seen this with staff or with organizations where we're trying to help them with maybe some staff issues. So you don't always have people in the right place, but we want to be sure we're building on their natural strengths, and then kind of helping them with the areas where they need guidance. We talked about following up and creating accountability, and encouragement, and celebrating the progress and celebrating the success ultimately. So as leaders, we develop skills if we don't have them. At least we hope we do. And we can't possibly do everything. So you either develop the areas where you're lacking, or another way to fill in that gap is to identify and partner with other people that have the complementary skills. I can say with Bonnie and I that have worked together now for, oh gosh, how many different organizations that we have partnered in, and this is something that has really helped us because we're very aligned with our goals and with our principles and with our general values, but we have different skill sets, and we've been able to really partner and to be able to use those in a complementary fashion and kind of maximize our effort. So the ability to learn is the most important quality a leader can have, stated by Sheryl Sandberg. And you can't always be in that position where you're going to find somebody that can fill in the gaps for you, or that they can't do it all the time. So it is really important to have your own development plan and to regularly learn and explore and be sure you're self-aware of what you are good at and what you aren't good at, and open to feedback. And one of the things, I'll just go back to the partnering with somebody. I know if you don't necessarily have a large number of staff, especially maybe on your management team, and you may not really know if there's a person that could complement you, but I think it's one of those things just to keep your eyes out for as you go through your work and try to, especially if you're aware of what those skills are that you're looking for. And you can be aware of that when you're hiring people, and also just who on the team might be able to help you that you hadn't considered before. So as we have said multiple times, that the mission is really powerful in inspiring, engaging others, both, internally on your team and also externally in the public, which ultimately ends up with providing additional support, whether it's in donations or volunteer help, etc. But again, it needs to be communicated, it needs to be lived, and it needs to be front of mind at all times. And Dan Pilato says, people are yearning to be asked to use the full measure of their potential for something they care about. So as long as it is something you care about, and that you're hiring people that are supportive of the basic cause, and the mission is exciting, it will help and inspire them to maximize their efforts for the cause. So that's all we have today. Next two webinars are on the next topic, as I said early on, that are tuning up your organization. And again, it's assessing your current work and figuring out how to make it more efficient so that you can get things done more effectively and more easily, and creating a united team in that effort. I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Okay, well, so now's the time for the Q&A portion. And so if you've got any questions to ask, post them in the chat window. And while I give everybody a little bit of time to type in their questions, we want to thank the Petco Foundation for supporting this web series. And the Petco Foundation is working to create a national lost and found database for pets. You can learn more and join that initiative by visiting petcofoundation.org/lostpets. And let's see. So there was a question earlier in the chat window that was about tracking data, and how that fits in with the project management app or system that you might be using. And I was thinking that you're probably better off tracking that data in the other apps for shelter management of animals and for donor management and volunteer management. But the question gets to a good point, which is how and when might you use data from these other apps to inform your action plans?
Yeah, you you definitely would. And I don't know if everyone was on the session last week, but one of the things we talked about was, gathering that information to help guide you in setting the goals for the organization. And I think Mark is right. If you don't have a system, a tool that works for you for tracking your animals that you're caring for, and for tracking donations, and financial transactions, those are three important systems that you need to be sure you have. Unfortunately, there isn't that I've found one that works great for doing all of these things all at once. And there's other ones too that such as volunteers. Often that's in a separate system. So until such time as there is this one system that can track all of the metrics that you would need for sheltering, we end up using different separate tools for tracking each of those things. So you might have QuickBooks for your financial transactions, and a donor database, and an animal system like Shelter Love, or one of the many that are out there, Chameleon, for example. And you would need to extract the data from each of those that would help guide you both in setting the goals. So you want to look at your historic data to set goals. And then going forward, you would have that information as a benchmark to compare and see how you're doing, if you're making the desired progress that you were hoping to make. I don't know if that fully answered that. Diane, you maybe want to jump in.
Yeah, I have just would like to add to that if you've developed your goals using the SMART test, one of the the M stands for measurable. So you will have metrics identified for each of your goals, so that you know what you need to either track or what you need to pull from whatever these other systems that Bonnie just talked about. So that's why that's a really important part of developing your goals.
And you could actually, and should actually, just to take the examples of the goals that we used as examples in the session today, one was related to volunteer hours. So you'd want to have the volunteer hours from the past, and in order to have come up with that goal, you probably were looking at them at the time to see that this was an opportunity, and probably also a need. Maybe staff, or maybe you're all volunteer and you really need more help. And so increasing volunteer hours would be a goal that would help you alleviate a challenge that you have. And you would want that number, the real number that you're from last year, and what you're aiming for. What does that 25% increase look like? And the same would go for the foster homes. If you were looking to be able to foster 20% more kittens, you'd need to know how many you fostered last year. And you could track throughout the year, how are we doing towards that very real number? So this question makes a good point.
Yes, and I'll say that both of the apps that Bonnie had mentioned for project management, Trello and Asana, that they, you can put in, you can take the numbers that, okay, we're 25% of the way to our goal, and have that added to the different ways that you're tracking tasks within those programs. So, so next up, we have a few questions about rewards. And so the whole question of, rewarding progress on these action plans and pointing it out. So the first one came from Jenny, which is that, do you think that tangible rewards are more or less important than words of praise?
You want me to take this one, Bonnie?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, as I said earlier, different people like different kinds of praise. So for some people, the tangible is not near as meaningful as just a heartfelt thank you. Some people like to get recognition in front of the team, and some people feel that's embarrassing. So there are various surveys that can be done to kind of determine how your team likes to get praise and rewarding for their successes. But also you can do team rewards, and that can vary also. But I know that as simple as it sounds, our team is of, especially the caregivers at Nevada Humane Society, when Bonnie and I were both there, just free pizza lunch made a huge difference. But there's a lot of different ways you can do that. And if you want more information on that, I suggest if you could reach out to us directly, and we can provide some more specifics for you.
Let me jump into a question that Philip asks, which is that is there a system in place for use specifically for volunteer information? And I know that there are a few apps. The one that I have the most experience with is called Volgistics. But maybe Diane, Bonnie, that are there any others that you've come across, or that ways that you'd recommend tracking volunteers?
Yeah, I think Volgistics is the most popular. It's the only one that I can recall knowing groups that use it. But I'm sure there are others. And if you're just starting out, you can use a spreadsheet. You can start with an Excel spreadsheet if you're a young organization or a new organization, and then progress to finding an app that meets your needs, like Volgistics. Diane may have other thoughts too.
No, I don't know of any others either. That's like Bonnie said, that's the one that we know that people use in our client system, in our world when we were in the sheltering ourselves.
Yeah, if
So
anyone else knows of others, feel free to post them to chat for each other.
Yep, that's what I was just going to say, that Lori from our team, she jumped in that Better Impact is another volunteer system. Okay, so next question comes from Raquel. What are the major differences in writing a plan to start a new program versus increasing your numbers on an existing program?
I guess my answer would be yes and no. You can talk to other people in the field, like if you're just starting an organization, or say your organization is just starting a new program. I would recommend talking to 4 or 5 other people who already have that program, or who already run an organization like the one you're trying to start, so that you have some real world information on which to base your plan. You don't have historic data. That's the one big difference. But you can still create a plan, I think.
And I think that the steps you would use to do that would be the same. It's that, like Bonnie said, the initial gathering of information and research may be different, but ultimately you would use the same steps as far as creating your goals and your specific actions that relate to those goals.
Okay, so now for a question that goes back to the rewards part of the discussion. So what do you think of the difference between having your peers recommend you for a reward versus management and leadership being the originators of those kudos?
Yeah, I love that idea. And having clear guidance for it. One of the programs Diane and I started at Nevada Humane Society was similar to that any employee or volunteer could nominate someone else to be recognized for going above and beyond. And we had standards. There was, I believe, a customer service focused award, and the customer could be internal. It could be that you helped a colleague, not necessarily just someone from the public, although that would be great too. And the other one was more animal care focused. So it was designed for the particular shelter setting, but it was very popular. And not only could anyone nominate someone for it, we actually had a committee that included staff. So it wasn't just the boss deciding who should be recognized. It was their peers, and it was very popular, and we have more information on that particular process. Diane, you may want to add something.
Well, I just was going to say that if anybody's interested, if you can either email us or maybe put your contact information in the chat session, we can send you some specific information on it that shows the process and the categories and just the sample documentation that we used.
Okay. Is there a way to tell when you're trying to create an action plan if the goal is beyond your current abilities or bandwidth? So you don't want to bite off too much. And so how do you keep it within what you're able to do? Well, you know.
Yeah, well, stretch goals are good. And I think setting the bar too low makes the goal not very inspiring or exciting. So it is a good question. And on the other hand, if you set every goal and it's so ambitious you can't achieve any of the goals, that's kind of demoralizing for everybody. So there is an art to it, I think. If you have a history, your organization has history, you would be able to look back over several years. So just to take the two goals we talked about, which was the foster care program, and the other one was about the volunteer program, and you wanted to increase metrics related to those, you would be able to look back over the years historically. And if you saw that each year you had a 3% increase in volunteers or a 10% increase in volunteers, that would help guide you in terms of what would be an aggressive goal, but not a ridiculous goal for this particular year. But you also want to look at all the reasons why. When we look at data from 2020, it's going to skew things, especially in things like volunteers, though maybe not foster homes, because sometimes those were higher than normal this year. So, does take some, it's a bit of an art, but Diane, maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's also okay to, I mean, you don't have to, I don't think people should feel like they're going to get beat up if they don't reach it. And if you set your goals too low, you can always adjust and increase it. So I agree with Bonnie that you look at history and circumstances and you're basically making a best guess. But I also think if you're involving the team in setting that goal, then they're inspired and they don't feel like something is put upon them, rather that they are a part of it and they're excited about trying to reach it. So we used to do it as an example at Nevada Humane Society with our monthly adoptions. And we did just what Bonnie said, is that we looked at, well, what did we do last year? What did we do last month? But also, what did we do last year on that same month? And let's push it. Let's push it up. And what do we have to do to increase? So, and we were almost always successful, but they were out there. they were definitely not easy. And people were very excited. And we just kept pushing the numbers. And as you remember in the SMART, if you were with us last week, one of the other, I believe it's, SMAA is achievable. So you want them to be achievable, so it's not demotivating, but like Bonnie said, there's nothing wrong with stretching you as an organization, as a department, and as individuals.
I mean, the idea of setting a goal is that you figure out what you need to get to it, which is something Diane just said in there that I think bears, repeating. And so, it's getting the whole team on it. It isn't just that the adoption staff has to now work harder to hit the adoption goal. It's that you need to engage the clinic because the animals need to go through the vetting process, and you need to engage the animal caregivers because they probably have a role in communicating information about the animals. You need to engage the marketing team, and you need to engage the board so that they are aware that this is a focus and that they are doing their part to get the word out. So, part of the purpose of a goal is kind of you're bringing all this energy to bear on this particular goal that you've set. And it can really energize people and help, as we talked about with these action plans, is what role does each person play in achieving these goals? And it can be pretty powerful. And so sometimes you can hit stretch goals that you didn't might not have thought you could, because you're really working to identify what do we need to do to achieve this goal.
Okay, well, we have one more question. Maybe we could do it a little quickly since we're right at the end of the time here. But it's about community programming and in part keeping animals out of the shelter. And if there are any ideas for what some goals might be around that in increasing community outreach programs.
Yes, well, one goal would be to look at your historic surrender rates. How many dogs and cats or rabbits or whatever animals you take are you accepting in the course of a year? And you can also look at, and so one thing you can do with that is look at the actual success rate of people who call your organization to surrender, and see how many of those you can fix or divert or find another solution for that animal, other than coming into the shelter. So there is data you can look at in relation to that. There are a lot of programs out there. I think most of them tend to focus on trying to keep pets in homes, but there are also rehoming programs where you help people find a new home if they really can't keep the pet. Diane, do you want to talk about that a bit too?
Yeah, it's a pretty broad question, so I'm not exactly sure specifically what they're asking, but one of the things we also could provide for you if you email us or put your contact information in chat, it is a handbook that we've developed over the years for various organizations. It's called an Animal Help Desk Handbook, but it gives a lot of guidance on how to set up a program to help with that surrender prevention. And there's certainly other specific programs out there that engage the community more in specifically keeping animals out of a shelter. But I think it might be better if we could talk specifics offline, if that's helpful. I would be happy to share some things with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want, we do phone calls with people. We typically do a free initial consult, and we look at those as an opportunity to just be helpful to you. So we're happy to talk about that and about your particular situation, so that you could try to figure out what metrics as far as community engagement might be meaningful for you, because they could include things like social media engagement and increase in donors. And so community engagement is a very broad topic, but and not really knowing your organization, it's a little hard to say, but we'd be happy to talk with you about it.
Okay, well, that wraps it up. And the email address is on the screen there to reach out for any of those questions to do offline. It's info@humanenetwork.org. And so we appreciate the time that you took to join us for this webinar today. And on Friday, I will send you all a link so that you can share this webinar with others. And there will be some additional documents that Bonnie mentioned that were covered during this session. And so part one of the Tune Up Your Organization webinar will be a week from today at the same time. And this webinar was supported by Petco Foundation and presented by Humane Network. And so thank you for all the work you do helping animals, and that'll do it for today.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks again. Bye.